Hey, what's up guys, it's me here, Zeb on zeb'scorner, and today I'm going to give you my 5 favorite plugins that I use pretty much all the time. So, there's no one plugin that trumps them all. I think that's a misnomer. I don't think it's a true statement to ever make if anyone ever really makes that. However, everybody has their favorite things that they go to, and I have 5 favorite plugins that I tend to use and why. Now, this is not going to be a tutorial on listening and seeing what it is that they do, but it's more or less why I think I use them and why, if you have not used them, why you should possibly use them. They're not a must, but they work for me very well in my workflow. So I'm not going to really even give you a real example of a session or anything like that, but it's just a discussion to really kind of get into why I use them, why I like them, and probably for you again, try it out and see what you think. Everybody has different things that they use whenever they go through their workflow. I tend to use these particular plugins and not necessarily in the order in which I'm going to show you them. One of my first plugins I always use in almost all cases, no matter what the genre, no matter what the song, no matter what it is that I'm doing. And most of the time I usually tend to get a lot of hip hop, reggae, bass type stuff, R&B type stuff. That's what I usually tend to get. Even if I was to do some rock stuff, which I've gotten a little bit of every now and again, I tend to use Waves SSL compressor. I tend to use it on the bus channel, in most cases, the master bus channel, or my subtrack channel, or my sub mix channel that goes into the master fader. I tend to use that not first, and at first it comes right after that comes an EQ, but I tend to use that there a lot. I use it a lot on drums. I definitely use it a lot on vocals. I like the way it sounds. I like the glued sound. Some people don't like that kind of sound because they think things don't have a bit of a separation that it needs to, but I don't use it very heavily. I tend to use it very lightly. And a lot of times, if you set it at a 4-to-1 with a medium attack and a medium release, you kind of get some grit stuff going on there. Again, it keeps the whole glued concept, which is why I tend to use it in that manner. With vocals, it's different. You tend to play with it in different ways, as well as, you experiment to see which settings you tend to like whenever you use it. But on drums, I use it on drums if it's a grouped track kind of thing. And I also use it again on several different instruments. But for the most part, I tend to use it on vocals, drums, and definitely on the master bus across the board. Now, it would depend upon the genre and what I'm going for. Not so much the genre, but it would definitely depend upon what it is I'm looking for. But if I want that glued sound, I definitely tend to go for that first. It's not the only compressor that actually gives you a glued sound, but it's definitely well known for it. UAD makes a version of it. I haven't really played with that one as yet. Actually, I have, but I don't have it here. There's another studio that I work out of, and they have it there. And I tend to use Waves because I know it's what I have here. And if I wish to switch, I can. But they both kind of give you the same thing. It's an air thing, which one is better, UAD or Waves or whoever makes an SSL compressor. The whole point is the bus compressor really is a good tool to use if you wish to have a semi-glued sound. I'm an old school person. I like it. I like a lot of the newer stuff as well, but there's a sense of something that I think that the SSL compressor can give you in what I think I use it for. Another one that I use a lot, and again, not in particular order, is Soundtoys Echo Boy. I really like the way that delay does what it does. It has a slew of different presets of different types of delays that you have within it. And of course, you can shape and do whatever you want with it. But I like really using the Telray version of it and just tweaking it to whatever I want it to really do. I don't always use the Telray, but when I do, I play with it a lot. It has a saturated sound within the delay within itself, so you can get some interesting things going on over there. Really simple, it's easy. For those who may not understand the delay concept and its timing thing and the math behind it, because I'm not a mathematician and I can't stand math, but hey, you have to learn how to use some of it in order to understand how a lot of these delay times and things work. But for the most part, it really is good. I like it. I love it ever since I have it. I would never really, pretty much not use anything else outside of Echo Boy. I don't use it on everything, and I definitely don't use it on every voice that is there. But it's definitely one of the plugins that I definitely use because I like the color of it. Every delay has a different color, but it's pretty much the same thing that I use pretty much all the time. Built-in low pass, high pass for cutting off, so you don't have to necessarily add another EQ for that. If you wish to, you can, of course, but I like it for the color. Again, this is all pretty much why I like these plugins, because of the sound and the color that they give. Not every compressor is equal, and not every delay is equal, and not every other form of effect is equal to each other. We pick them for particular reasons. I really like the way that it sounds. And between that, if I don't necessarily use that one, sometimes I play with the H delay a little bit too, because I kind of like it for some simple things that it could do. My third favorite plugin to use, and I don't always use this, even though yet it's still one of my favorite to use, is Decapitator. Everybody probably, if you heard of Echo Boy, then you very well know Decapitator. Decapitator is the harmonic king, if you would, so to speak. Everybody pretty much uses it for the same principles. It gives you a nice set of grit. I pronounce grit a lot because I like to use a lot of grit in some of my production, depending upon, again, the genre. I like an old school feel because, I come from the old school era. As you could tell, a lot of us grayed-haired people tend to come back from that time, and there's a reason why we like that stuff from back then, even though some people are trying to do some newer things. Analog really gives you a good feel because you don't want a cold and sterile sound if you're using digital, and if you're definitely in the digital domain, which most of us are, if you're not careful, you could get a very cold and brittle feeling sound. And Decapitator is one of the things that could kind of help you depending upon, again, what it is that you're doing. I tend to use it mostly on drums. You can use it on vocals. You can use it pretty much on anything where you wish to have some pronunciation and some grit, but I tend to use it on drums. Simple plug and play thing to use, and it's not really hard for you to really understand how it works. So there's a mix knob for, of course, you're paralleling how wet and how dry you wish it to be. Low cut and high cut passing, pretty much simple. Darker makes it more bottomy, so to speak. It kind of gives it a more, not a muddy sound, but it definitely kind of could keep it in a darker area or lower end area. And definitely bright is for, of course, if you wish to have a little bit more of a little top end part coming in. Of course, now the drive is how hard you wish to make it move, and of course, this is really a really powerful part of this part right here. So I'd be really lenient with it, because depending on what you're trying to do or what it is that you're putting it on, especially drums, it could really drive it to a hard extent. And of course, this punish is really going to really do even more damage than the drive is in itself. So you could really do some damage with it in a good way, and you could definitely get some effects really coming out more. When I definitely use it on drums, I tend to use it on kicks primarily, because kicks to me are the most important part of hip hop, even some R&B and some rock and some things that have a kick pronunciation. You want that kick to stick out a little bit, and this is the tool that I use to make that happen. Another favorite of mine is Waves NLS for non-linear summing. I like this thing that it could do. I tend to use both parts that come with it. Now, usually when you get it, you get the version that comes, let's put that. Now, when you get it, you get two versions. You get the bus version, which goes on the master channel, and that's the only place it really should go. And it actually acts as a summing unit for the master channel. And you could also use the version that goes on into individual tracks, and that is the channel strip version. And Bink, it looks a little bit something like this. Now, what you get with this is these two could work in conjunction with each other. So let's say, let's open this a little bit more. Boop. All right, and when you open this, these different VCA groups are these here at the bottom on the master bus version. And what you get is, if you do something like, I have vocals and I may use the channel version on a vocal, then I would set that group to, or set that voice to a particular group. If I had drums, then I would do something like set the VCA to another group, and then I could have this knob affect here on the master bus version. I could affect this knob to affect what happens here in the group channel. So the drums will have its own VCA group, and the vocals will have their own. And if I use it on the bass, same for the bass, same for piano, same for whatever instrument is actually happening, the channel strip will affect the group that it's assigned to. And this is kind of brilliant. I kind of like it. I tend to use Spike, which I believe also is supposed to be emulating the SSL version, and then mic, EMI, and again Nevo for these are all producers emulating their board for the boards that they're supposed to also be kind of, I think, equivalent to. And Nevo, I think, is supposed to be the Neve console. Again, don't know the exact science, but that's what I believe these producers or these engineers are actually modeling their boards off of. So pretty interesting. I like it. I tend to use this a lot, but I've been leaning more towards this in the last couple of mixes that I've been doing. And the sounds are subtle. Subtle. You really have to use your ears in order to really understand what's happening. And in a great room, in a great setting, you would really hear those subtle differences. Again, the drive for the channel is pretty much no different from that of the capitator or anything that has drive, but it really does put some impact in it. Again, I'm not going to get into the nerdy science part of it because I don't want to say I know what I'm saying and I'm saying it in the wrong way. But there is a difference between this drive and the drive of a decapitator or any other kind of plugin that has a drive setting. So they're different. You just have to really listen to which one is giving you what you want. But for the most part, these two kind of go together. So I want to say that they're not 4 and 5, but they're kind of one and the same. But for the most part, if I don't always use the channel, I definitely use this, the bus, because it allows me to use the metering system to know how hard am I hitting in the kick and whatever. How hard am I hitting in the area of where I don't want it to hit too hard. Therefore, I use the metering system as well as I use the trim. It allows me to control the overall track within itself, as well as I can use the drive to put some harmonics or grit back into the whole master channel itself. I like it a lot. I tend to take off. Sometimes I leave the noise on by accident, or I would just take it off. And again, you could use this to control these VCAs will control how the master works, on how the track is affecting the master in itself. It will be almost like side chaining a particular instrument to affect the compressor on that particular track. That's another tutorial altogether. That is definitely, if not next to the SSL, that may be the second most or first most used piece of toolery I tend to use in most of my mixes. In almost all my mixes, you will find the NLS bus on there for sure. And I usually tend to have it on the output of the master fader, and then everything else is on my submix routing into that. So therefore, the NLS is only just really giving me an idea of what's happening to everything else, and I tend to put everything else on my submix. Oh, one last thing. If you're definitely using the NLS channel, right, as you see here, you see what it says, Neve 01, and let's say we were to use it on, maybe not that one, let's do this one. Let's say we were to use it over here, right? So if you're meticulous like me, right? If this was the first one that I used, this track here is a vocal. And if I was to use it on here, right, and this were number one, right, and I wanted to go to this one here, I would want to make this one number two, right? And you could go there and bam, number two. Now there's a shortcut way to do it, and I forget the shortcut. But for the most part, you get to have a different channel strip with a different sound per channel. So it's a desk, it's acting like a desk, and each section of, or each channel of that desk is going to have a slight different sound. Can you really hear it? It's going to take practice to really hear the difference between each one of those channels. And of course, you have something like 32 for each one. So 32 for Neve, Mike, and Spike. You get different ones for each one. You get 32 for each one. So that's kind of a neat thing. Again, it depends on how wide of a mix you really want your mix to be. I tend to like my mixes to be deep and wide and full. In this area where I am, I'm not going to always get that, but stay tuned. I'm going to really give you a whole overall of what I'm going to do in this particular place here, because I'm going to make the best of what I can here and then take my stuff elsewhere, but that's something else altogether. But if you really are into your mixes to sound full and boomy, well, not boomy, but full and bodied, this is kind of one of the steps you could do. So, side note, I'll probably get into that in a later date in another tutorial. If so, let me know. I'll do it. That's definitely one of the things you can do with this NLS channel strip, and I forgot to tell you. I thought I should tell you because it's an interesting tidbit, and not many people really use it. And the fifth, but not necessarily the last, is the CLA 3A. I tend to like to use that compressor a lot. I think, again, I like subtle differences. I don't like drastic differences like you put on the button and boom, you think magic happens. That's not producing. That's not engineering in no shape, way, or form. I like subtle movements, subtle differences. Sometimes I do not mind the extreme boom in your face. But depending on what that thing I'm going for, I may expect it to do that. In this case here, 3LA does not do that for me. Simple basic compressor, gain for volume, threshold for reduction, and really just analog sounds for noise. You can really kind of hear it. Well, you're not going to hear it here because I'll do that later. It's a compressor slash limiter, and I like it. I think a lot of people tend to go for we're going to do that here. A lot of people tend to go for the LA2A, and it is also good. But I think the LA2A has a little bit more power to me. Now, depending on what you're trying to use it for, people tend to reach for that because, again, people tend to believe that volume is better than body, if that kind of makes sense. I don't necessarily want I don't necessarily want volume. I think I want more body, and I think that the control of the body comes from the 3A, and not by any means taking away from the 2A, because I do use that sometimes as well. But I like subtle, and I like to build as I mix. So I believe that this is one of the tools that I use. I tend to use it a lot on vocals, drums, bus channels, a bunch of different things I tend to use it for, and I really tend to think it's really good. Now, everybody tends to also go for the 1176, which is equally good, but I use that as well a lot too. But my favorite between the two would probably be the 3A and not the 1176. I'm not trying to diss the 1176, but I'm just saying favorite. And I had a favorite, and my favorite really is the 3A versus the 1176. I tend to use the 1176 a lot, but I use it for practical reasons versus, oh, I'm going to reach for my favorite thing because I want this favorite thing to do this particular type of thing. And the 3A gives me more of a favorite, loving, warm, fuzzy feeling versus then what I think the 1176 can do. And the 1176 is different. And there's a bunch of people that make a bunch of different 3As, 1176s, 2As. Everybody and their mama makes it. I tend to use the wave version because I have a lot of wave stuff, And I do have some other plugins as well. And as I change my system, I'll be getting more different things to compare all of these pretty nuances and stuff like that. But the 3A really does give me what I needed to do. I don't really go too crazy. I usually tend to keep the knob here for the most part, and I let a lot of the peak do its thing. I really can't complain about that. If I wanted to give you a sixth favorite plugin, it would be Waves C4. And for the hell of it, why not talk about that? Now, there's a C6, and I think there's a C6 sidechain. I think there's a newer one now. I'm not too sure. I don't remember. But for the most part, the C4 is a multiband compressor, or in this case, a multiband processor, which is the same thing. But I like using it. Now, I have tried, is it the new R6? I can't remember the Waves R6 or F6. I don't remember. But I've tried that. It's a dynamic EQ, which kind of does the same thing. So dynamic EQ and multiband compression or multiband processing kind of does the same thing. I use this one a lot on vocals because I like my vocals to have movement. You have to hear what's moving. You don't want your vocals to sit dead in your face, even though you want it to kind of sit in your face. For me, I think the C4 gives a certain movement that is not found in other compressors or multiband compressors. I mean, all other multiband compressors kind of do the same thing, but there is a movement. Fab Filters, multiband compression does the same thing, but I like this one. It's not really one over the other. They both do the same thing. I don't use the multiband compression too much on individual tracks. I may use it on a master bus, but I will definitely use this one a lot. Probably on drums, more so on vocals. Primarily for the movement that I hear. Maybe me, I may be crazy. I hear a certain fluidity that I don't get from a compressor. A compressor is just gonna, to me, just do this in your face, or in your ear rather, and it's not going to move. When I take away the movement of what the C4 is doing, I feel that it's sterile. And not to say that sterile is bad, but that movement kind of acts as if it's riding, if you said it correctly. That'll be another tutorial again also as well. But that is giving me what I want. I want some semi-vocal riding without me doing this all day on a fader. And of course, we do that anyway with automation. But I really do like the way it kind of moves. If I had to have anything in all my mixes, or most of my mixes, or a good portion of my mixes, it would be the C4. It's my sixth favorite, even though I said 5. So, sue me. But for the most part, I do like that, and I think for those who use it, play around with it. If you've never used it before, play around with it. And I think everybody has a different method for using it. I advise to watch the Tony Maserati and how he uses it. It's interesting. Different approach, similar thing. I like the way it moves. And I think it gives me a movement that I don't think any other multiband compressor can. They all, again, do the same thing. It's a color thing. It's pretty much all plugins give you a different sound, a different color, even though they do somewhat of the same thing. EQs do the same thing. We reach for different EQs for different sonics, and we are doing the same thing here with these. So those are my top 5 plus 1 favorite plugins that I use. I think you guys will like to use it if you've never used it before. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the little belly thing to let you guys know I'm coming with stuff when I'm coming with stuff. And boom! Oh, where do I get these things from? I think these guys are going out of business, supposedly. This is crazy, right? Rubik's Cube, right? See the whole Rubik's Cube thing? I don't know why. I don't know how to solve this thing for nothing, right? But you like it, right? Boom, it's crazy. I will put a link at the bottom so you can see where I got this one from, even though this is not a plug. And if they're not going out of business, get you one. Anyway, that's it. Oh, I just constantly keep butchering that.